T. Wilhelm Tenholtern, born August 17, 1922 in Matterborn, and fell in Hungary in March of 1945. He was an Oberkanonier and fell near Lake Balaton. Based off the time frame and location, it appears Wilhelm was killed during the last major German offensive of the war, the Plattensee Offensive. The fighting would last from March 6th to March 15th, leading to over 12,000 German casualties. Johann Tesch, born March 6, 1921 in Cleve, and fell March 12, 1943 at Volchov. Johann was a Gefreiter and would die in a field hospital in Estonia. He is buried in the military cemetery in Tartu. Theodor von Thiel, born February 5, 1908 in Matterborn, and fell April 17, 1947 in Bedburg. There was a displaced person camp in Bedburg, so it is possible he was released from Soviet captivity and died there of an illness, or he could have died in a hospital there from his wounds. Wilhelm Thun, born December 28, 1916 in Rindern, and died in December of 1944. Gerhard Timmer, born September 25, 1919 in Cleve, and fell October 22, 1941. Gerhard was a Gefreiter in the 3rd Company of Krautschützen, or Motorcycle Battalion 43, part of the 13th Panzer Division. He was killed in Morskoye-Shulekskaya, Russia. Shortly after his death, one of the battalion's companies would be dissolved due to high casualties. Leonard Timmermans, born June 13, 1923 in Cleve, and fell March 16, 1945. Maria Tretman, born July 30, 1922 in Cleve, and fell October 5, 1944 in an air raid. Emil Tripp, born May 25, 1917 in Cleve, and fell March 21, 1943 in the East. Emil was an Obergefreiter in the 3rd Company of Jaeger Regiment 17L, part of Luftwaffe Field Division 9. He would die of a gut shot in a field hospital in Ropsha, Russia. V. Aloy Vereschild, born January 4, 1924, and fell on February 15, 1943. Wilhelm Vereschild, born March 20, 1919 in Cleve, and died in a hospital on November 17, 1943. Wilhelm was an Obergefreiter and died in Nikolaev, Ukraine. Many of those sleeping under the dust of the earth will awaken. Daniel 12:2. Hubert Venmans, born March 19, 1924 in Gosch, and fell September 9, 1943 in the East. Gottfried Verfort, born March 30, 1920 in Matterborn, and fell on July 3, 1943. Johann Verhulstunk, born June 11, 1894 in Wordhausen, and fell October 7, 1944 in an air raid. Johann was one of many factory workers killed that night, including Heinrich Bauers, Gerhard Clausen, Walter Clausen, Johann van der Essen, Theodor Gorsen, Fritz Konders, Heinrich Linders, Theodor Nielen, and Katharina Schweig. Wilhelm Verkulen, born October 15, 1921 in Matterborn, and fell April 1945 in Kurland. Wilhelm was an Obergefreiter and was killed south of Frauenburg during the fighting in the Kurland pocket. Alphonse Verrieth, born October 30, 1923 in Rindern, and fell December 26, 1944. Alphonse was a Gefreiter, and his exact place of death was not recorded. He is currently buried in the military cemetery in Schleiden-Gemund, Germany. Johanna Ververs, born March 22, 1915 in Cleve, and fell October 7, 1944 in an air raid. As we mentioned only a few names ago, many of the factory workers were killed in the same raid. Gerhard Viel, born December 28, 1922 in Cleve, and fell July 22, 1942 in the East. Gerhard was a Schütze in the 1st Company of Krautschützen Battalion 165, part of the 16th Infantry Division. He died from a gunshot wound to the chest in Karayevo-Kadamovsky, Russia, and is buried in the military cemetery in Krasnodar-Apsheronsk in the Unknown Soldiers Section, Block 7. 2 other factory workers, Jacob Arnst and Anton de Venter, also served in the division, both in Infantry Regiment 60. Jacob was an Obergefreiter in Company 1 and was killed by a headshot in Maximovka on July 2, 1942. Anton was a Schütze in Company 11 and was killed August 27, 1942. Wilhelm Vogel, Born April 17th, 1920 in Cleve, and fell August 10th, 1941. Wilhelm was an Obergefreiter in the 7th Company of Infantry Regiment 23, part of the 11th Infantry Division. He was killed by an artillery shot to the head, north of Liobovichi, Russia. He is buried in the military cemetery in Krosten. Werner Voss, born June 4th, 1922 in Rijswijk, and fell July 15th, 1943 in France. Werner was a Gefreiter and was killed near Valence. The area was a hotspot for resistance activity, so this is most likely how Werner was killed. He is buried in the military cemetery in Dagneux, Block 31, Row 10, Grave 357. W. Hans Walterfang, born December 20th, 1919 in Cleve, and fell December 8th, 1942 in the East. Johannes was an Obergefreiter and died at a field hospital, Soft-Verencino. Peter Walterfang, born July 28, 1919 in Cleve, and fell on April 6, 1944 in the East. Peter was an Obergefreiter, or Feldwebel, sources vary, in the 1st Company of Pioneer Battalion 227, part of the 227th Infantry Division. He was killed by shrapnel to the back and chest by Alvear in Estonia. 3 other factory workers who served in the division were Gerhard Bruckmann, Wilhelm von Eck, and Karl Mulder. Gerhard was a grenadier in the 8th Company of Grenadier Regiment 366 and was killed by a gunshot wound to the chest on January 26, 1944, in Yelits-Avetino, Russia. Wilhelm was a Gefreiter in Company 13 of Grenadier Regiment 328 and was killed by shrapnel in Schlüsselburg, Russia, on January 12, 1943. Karl was a Gefreiter in Company 8, the Maschinengewehr Company of Infantry Regiment 328. He was killed by a mine on August 18, 1942, in Mustalovo. Max Weimer, born November 3, 1925 in Cleve, and fell October 22, 1944. Wilhelmine Velk, born Rolofs, born on April 3, 1909 in Matterborn, and fell February 7, 1945 in an air raid. Several other factory workers were killed in the same raid, including Anton Holtermans, Josephine Konders, and Gerhard Meyer. Josef Velmans, born April 14, 1908 in Cleve, and fell in December of 1945. Paul Vensing, born March 28, 1913 in Matterborn, and fell on April 4, 1943. Paul was an Obergefreiter in the 1st Battery of Reserve Flak Abteilung 341. This unit was serving the area around Storaye, Russia, and Paul would die from heavy shrapnel wounds to both legs. He is buried in the Korpovo Military Cemetery, Block 32, Row 20, Grave 1349. Heinz Westerhoff, born February 26, 1927 in Kellen, and fell October 18, 1944. Heinrich von Vickern, born July 13, 1913 in Gosch, and fell February 13, 1944 in the East. Heinrich was an Oberjäger in the 1st Company of Jaeger Regiment 50L, part of Felddivision 4. He was killed by a shrapnel wound to both legs in Koitovo, Vitebsk. He was most likely been transferred as an unknown soldier to the military cemetery in Stashatkovo, Belarus. Eugen Wiedmeyer, born October 27, 1926 in Eppelheim, and died of his wounds on August 9, 1944. Eugen was a grenadier and died in a field hospital in Zembrów, Poland. Leonard Willemsen, born April 11, 1923 in Groesbeck, and fell November 23, 1942 in the East. Leonard was a rider and was killed in Vergiaki, Russia. He has most likely been transferred to the military cemetery in Rososhka. Heinrich Winterberg, born October 19, 1919 in Cleve, and fell April 26, 1945. August Wolters, born August 14, 1910 in Matterborn, and died February 11, 1945 in Siberia. Theodor Wolters, born March 23, 1887 in Cleve, and fell October 7, 1944 in an air raid. As previously discussed, many other factory workers were killed in the same raid. Theodor Vinens, born March 17, 1912 in Matterborn, and died after being wounded in Italy on August 7, 1944. Theodor was a Gefreiter, and his death location is not recorded. He is buried in the Pometzia Military Cemetery, Block M, Grave 216. Z. Johannes Zwanziger, born May 26, 1910 in Cleve, and fell August 28, 1942 in the East. Johann was an Obergefreiter and was killed in Poporski. He is most likely buried as an unknown soldier in the Rososhka military cemetery. Sand blows over the dead, but memory shows how hearts once blazed before their eyes fell. Sing a song over graves of eternal melodies. Stay with me and listen and never forget her, Germany. Herbert Bohm.